Leaders without education create bad habits. Follow me. Let's go. Hello, everybody. This is JJ Hardy with Victory Leadership Coaching. I am here with Elise Woodworth, and we are going to chat. This recording will also be, if you go to like Spotify and all those places, it's going to be on my Leaders Lounge podcast. So look for it there, and I hope you enjoy the conversation on here. But I met Elise Woodworth through a networking group, and I'll let her talk more about that and also about her business, not battle mindset that we're going to be talking about today. Hi, Elise.
Hi, JJ. How are you?
I'm great. It's a good day.
Well, I'm really excited to be here. And we did meet through a networking group. It was the Freedom Makers Virtual Services Forum All Call. It's a monthly networking group that is free for everyone, small business owners, entrepreneurs, military spouse. We have a very strong veteran presence, but that's not required. But we get together monthly and we collaborate, we mastermind a little bit, and it just provides a really great sense of community. It's a group that I've been a part of now for over 3 years and have been showing up monthly to meet people, to grow, and it has been tremendous for my network and for my ability to host networking calls. I didn't know that was a skill I needed, but they have been tremendous at letting me continue to lead that group.
Well, and I'm glad I met you there. I'm really anxious. Can you tell us a little bit more of this, about this business, not battle mindset that you wrote about?
Sure. So the business, not battle mindset is an idea I had for many years. And I know lots of entrepreneurs out there can probably relate to, like, I've got this really good idea and I want to share it. And it was about 2 years ago in January that I finally said, yes, I'm going to write this book, sit down and I'm going to put it out there. The idea of business, not battle, is that we can use our mindset, and that's something many people talk about, but we can use that mindset to be focused on business and stay away from the battles that so often creep up in our daily lives, in our workplaces, in our meetings. And when I talk about business, I like to define it, right? Because you need to know where you're starting. So I define business as the mutually beneficial exchange of products, services, or ideas. Now, mutually beneficial is really important because that means you're both getting something out of it, both parties. Battle, on the other hand, brings to mind conflict, struggle, lots of tension, anxiety, frustration, where there is a clear winner and loser. And those are situations that tend not to be good or not to be mutually beneficial. Mm-hmm. And so I like to encourage people to stay focused on business.
So that's really interesting. And, I when I think of business, not battle, I think of all the wonderful connections that you can make. And I don't know if you address this in your book. I'll be honest with you. Since you clicked on here to be a guest, I haven't received it in the mail yet. I did purchase it, but I haven't gotten it yet. So I look forward to reading that. However, when I think of business, not battle, I think of how we create all these meaningful connections, and you talk about the exchange of goods and services. Well, what about building a network? I've been talking about this quite a bit. If you look at everything as something that's potentially beneficial, then everyone is a wonderful person to talk to. And that's kind of what drives me through the success in my business so far, is that I'm not afraid to turn down a conversation because you never know where it's going to go.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. And one of the fun things that I've heard, I keep hearing it and I've heard it more frequently, and so I'm going to share it with you guys again today, is that, what's the idea? I phrase it differently in my head, but the idea is that everybody has something to give you. I word it in my head as there's always something to learn.
Mhm.
So no matter what conversation or podcast you're watching or conversation you're having in the hall, at school, at work, there's always something to learn from those people. And those can be some of the most beneficial conversations that you had.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I used to actually uh, drive that point home when I was still on active duty. You know, you never know who you're going to run into or what they can bring to the table. So you always have to keep your mind open. And typically, when you're having a conversation, you keep your mouth shut until it's your time to talk, because you can learn so much. And that's why I do these live streams and podcasts. I mean, they're just, I get to learn more and more about the initiatives that people are doing, the way they think about leadership, business, all of those things. And it's just, it teaches me so much more than I already know. And I'll be honest with you, my business is only a couple years in its infancy still. So I have so much to learn. So I agree. All conversations are extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to dive in a little bit to how to sort of shift your mindset towards this business, not battle
Okay.
idea. There are 4 key elements to the mindset that I share, and we dive into it in the book, which I will say is specifically written towards nonprofit board members. Back in 2014, I was invited to be on my first nonprofit board, and I was stepping into some really big shoes, and I felt like I don't want to mess this up. This could go a lot of different ways, but I'd never been involved with a nonprofit before. And so I looked around for a book, something to help me do well, be successful, be effective in my role. And there are a lot of leadership books. There are a lot of management books. There are a lot of nonprofit leadership books and board development books. But what I couldn't find was the how to do it as a board member book.
Mm,
And
mm,
so this first book, in what I hope to be a series one day, will guide the reader through what they need to know with respect to these 4 elements for how they can be effective for their organization. But the method, the elements apply in so many different ways, which is why I'm excited to be sharing it with the leaders that you reach out to in your network. So the first is awareness, being aware of yourself. Now, this is something we talk a lot about. People bring up self-awareness all the time.
mhm.
And I liken it to having a resume. A lot of us have a resume or a speaking profile or a CV, something that tells us what we've done, who we are. But I say it goes a little deeper than that. You need to be aware of your strengths and weaknesses, what you enjoy doing, what you don't like doing. You need to be aware of your goals, your personal goals, your values, what you stand for. And when you start to find these things, you find another very key element in business, not battle. You find confidence. And it's that confidence that success comes from. So knowing yourself. And you find that confidence through introspection, which unfortunately, no one can do for you. You have to take some time to step back and say, what are my styles? How do I communicate? How do I lead? And I don't know if you've ever heard of a leader user guide. Have you ever heard of that terminology before?
I haven't. A leader user guide.
A leader user guide. And it is essentially a document or a form that you would put together as a leader. It's something I think that they've started to do in the military. I don't know. It's been since I got out. But for leaders to put together, this is how I operate, and be able to share that with their new company, new flight, you get a new person in. It's like, this is how to best use me as a leader. And it's sort of a get to know you guide.
So is it almost, you could almost frame it as like a self SOP that you
Mm-hmm.
take around with you to all of your jobs and share with all of your subordinates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huh.
And I thought that was a really neat way to bring up styles. So instead of spending that awkward 6 months where you're kind of feeling everybody out and you're learning lots of new things about not only the organization and the processes and procedures, but the people as well, it kind of jumpstarts that. But just going through the exercise of filling it out can be so telling. It can be a
Mhm.
really difficult thing to do because you really have to take a hard look at yourself.
I'm gonna look more into that, and I might even incorporate that into some of my teachings because that is such a smart idea. I
I
mean,
agree. It's not mine. I'm passing it on.
well, isn't that the way all the best ideas are? You know, you don't reinvent the wheel. You take something else that's already there and you just do it.
Yeah.
So,
So there's awareness of yourself, and then there's awareness of the organization. So in the military, when you're frequently moved around, you have a good idea of the big mission, the big strategic, what's the Air Force doing? What's the Army doing? You might have a good understanding of what your base is doing. What's the position? Um, what's the function of the base? What's the function of our group, squadron, flight goes down? But being aware of that in the civilian world as a leader, it's important to know just the same thing.
mhm.
I talk about this with board members a lot because there's often a gap here between the mission of the organization and what the board member can articulate about that mission. Also, the strategy of how they're going about achieving that mission. And these are really important things to understand. So, in the strategy of an organization, you have, of course, their values, their vision, their mission, their strategy, how they're actually going about things, their goals, their tactics, and their culture.
Mhm.
And these are all things that are important to be aware of to understand if it's a good fit for you to spend your time with, or if it is a place where there might be some weaknesses and that need to be addressed, which goes right into the second element of the business not battle mindset, which is asking thoughtful questions. And a thoughtful question, you might say, aren't all questions thoughtful? and and you've probably also heard that there are no bad questions, no stupid questions,
I think that's a better way to say it. No stupid
no
questions.
stupid
There
questions.
might be some bad questions, but there are no stupid questions.
There are bad questions. There are poorly worded, self-serving, directly undermining questions that should never be asked. And this is something that I find is a really easy place for battle to creep in, especially in meetings. Have you thought about doing it this way? Well, no, I haven't. Or why did you do it that way?
Hmm.
Okay. These are questions that are going to put up barriers. But a thoughtful question is going to be open ended, serves to deepen understanding, and not have a yes or no answer.
Mhm.
A
I
really
think
fun piece of this that I really enjoy is the awkward silence that sometimes comes after them.
well, it's interesting you say that, and I would challenge you just to kind of see where your mind's at with that and to get a point of view. Does that also depend on the situation? Because I think there's a time and a place to ask those exact questions even that you just got done asking, and that could be in a planning session or maybe in a just any sort of a venue where you're trying to build strategy for something.
Mhm.
You know, there is also a time and a place. There might a bad question now might not be a bad question if you take it to another venue. I mean,
Mhm.
so it's
And
not
I do talk about timing in the book.
timing is
I talk
everything.
about timing and when to ask and what not to ask. And but I challenge you to
Hmm.
think about when you're adding in a solution into the question. Have you thought about doing it this way? If you are actually offering advice or a solution, word it that way
Okay.
instead of wording it as a question, which makes it seem or can be perceived as, well, you don't think I could have thought of that myself. And it will put barriers up, and they're not aware of it. They don't think about it, but it can create a situation where JJ has all the answers. So why would I come up with any?
Lord knows I don't want anybody to think that.
I don't know. You've got some good ones though.
No. Well, it's just important to, you gotta meet people where they're at. And I think that's the only reason that you're saying that the way you're saying it is because if you want to have a constructive conversation, you have to understand your environment. And so there might be some environments where, you almost have to start cursing at people just to get their attention. And some environments where you have to be very politically correct. Otherwise, you're going to lose the whole room. And that's kind of where my mind was in asking that question. It's not necessarily that there's a right or wrong question. It just all depends on the type of people that you're surrounding yourself with and the environment but I understand what you're saying. It's very important to make sure that I talk about this all the time, keeping the end in mind. And so if you're asking a question that's going to damage a relationship or maybe make the entire room feel uncomfortable, was that really the right question to answer?
And what has that really gained for you?
All you did was I talk about the emotional piggy bank all the time. Well, if that piggy bank is half full or even more than half full and you do something to make a bunch of people feel uncomfortable, well, now that emotional piggy bank's just been dumped on the table and you're going to have to scramble to pick all those coins back up. Otherwise, you're not going to be a part of the conversation anymore.
Here's a great example for you.
Yes.
If you're in finance is another huge money is always a really delicate place to find battle.
Oh, yes.
When we're talking about money. So if you think about why are we reporting our finances this way versus I'm having trouble understanding the financial report. Could you explain to me why we're doing it this way? It's no longer me attacking the person reporting on the finances. It's trying to find understanding.
Yeah, it's trying to actually find a solution rather than almost have a borderline attack on what that person has already put together.
And so it's a skill that I still work on and I catch myself now doing because I do talk about it so much. And I say, and so what I'll do if I have a question and it is in a big meeting, lots of people, time is precious, I'll write the question down and I'll think about how that would be perceived in the conversation.
Okay.
And that serves two really good purposes. One is that if the conversation moves on past your question, you've still got it written down and can ask it later. Either the conversation will come back to it or you can seek out that person after the meeting and talk to them about it. It will also help you filter out any of the negativity or the unthoughtfulness that might be in it and help you rephrase it better when you're saying it.
I love how much thought you've put into that. Can I change gears though and go back a little bit to what you talked about before?
Sure.
So you talked about organizational awareness. Well, what you discussed there, it's not just a nonprofit, it's any business. And the one thing that I have known that oftentimes when businesses are in their infancy and even as they are growing, what falls short is that mission, that vision, that all of those strategic things that need to be in place. And it only bothers me because it's like, how much have you actually thought about what you're doing in your business? But it seems like it almost completely translates over into the nonprofit world. And I know you're intelligent in both of those things. I would just, there's a definite correlation there. So I'd like to hear more about, the organizational awareness in the nonprofit world. Is it just about culture, or is there more to it than that?
I think things are very similar
Okay.
in the for-profit sector and the nonprofit sector. And it's been very easy for me to transition to focusing with nonprofits. There is a heavier emphasis on the mission because it is social change. We're filling a gap. We're creating change in the world, in society. And so you find a lot more passion and inspiration for the mission than you find normally in the for-profit side of things.
Okay.
But the same indicators are there. There is another element that is added in with fundraising and seeking grants. But a lot of that is easily related to marketing.
Yeah.
And the same way you would market a product or service, you need to market your organization and its mission.
It's funny. If you don't know those things, it does make it hard when you're trying to go somewhere and ask for money for whether it's a fundraiser that you're putting together, or maybe some free stuff for a fundraiser that you're putting together, whatever the case may be. If you don't have all those ducks in a row, those conversations get very awkward.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. It's just like marketing for your business. So if you don't, going back to a culture standpoint, if you don't have a passion for the organization that you're working in, or maybe you're volunteering for to go and try to help, and you're just volunteering to check the block, it's going to be very difficult for you to go out there when it's time to do fundraising and try to get items for a silent auction or something like that, because you're not going to have the same oomph behind the message that you're putting out
right
to all of those people. So it definitely, wow. I've done a little bit of fundraising. Did I enjoy it? Not really. I enjoy working at like the pancake breakfasts and stuff, though. I mean, those are always fun. You get to talk to almost every walk of life, but I enjoy that part of fundraising. But walking into a business, it's just as hard as trying to market myself for myself. It's really awkward.
I've been learning more about fundraising in this walk that I'm in. Have been learning more about the fundraising side of things, and have come to understand that when you feel passionate enough about a mission and strong enough, reassured enough in the organization that all the processes and procedures are in place, that we're meeting the needs, we're meeting the goals that we've set, it becomes a much easier conversation. And it's no longer making an ask. It's having a conversation and inviting people into your enthusiasm for the mission, for the organization. So there's that. And I know that you also reach a lot of younger leaders.
Yeah.
And so I want to share the importance of understanding strategy for where you're at in leadership. So if you think of a middle level manager or a rising leader in an organization, your company is going to have a strategy. Hopefully your nonprofit, if you're in the nonprofit industry, will have a strategy. And those strategic plans should be updated. Some will be updated annually, 3 or 5 years. When those are updated, as a young leader, I'm going to shout out and encourage you guys to look at your own strategy and how that connects. Connect what you're doing to that strategy that's been put out, the new strategy, whatever it is. Then find a way to communicate that to the people that are working with and for you. Because that is what creates engagement.
You're right. It's almost like using the commander's intent and building your own.
When volunteers understand how their work fits into the bigger mission, when frontline workers understand how what they're doing on the assembly line fits into the bigger mission, it is easier for them to stay engaged and passionate, because they see you being engaged and passionate. So I encourage you to take those strategic plans and make them your own and share them. That's my leadership aside for that note.
No, it's important. I always talk about the Army's definition of leadership is because it's like so deeply beat into my skull that I can't seem to find another way to articulate it sometimes. But purpose, direction, and motivation. That's like the recipe for creating influence for a team and an organization. And so if you're thinking about purpose, that's the why. Why are we doing all this crap? Why am I here in this organization? Why? And
that leads really nicely. That leads really nicely into the third element of the business not battle mindset, which is being an advocate.
Oh yeah.
So when you're able to accept the responsibility or to own the passion for the organization, its mission, the strategy, you're able to advocate and bring other people with you. In the book, I talk about the people on your bus. You want everybody on the bus to know where you're taking them. But being able to share that and how you share that can be really impactful for their level of willingness to stay on the bus, to bring other people onto the bus with them, and to enjoy the ride, because isn't that what it's all about?
Yes.
Actually.
Yes, it is. It is. And they have to enjoy that ride and want to be along for that ride and believe in that ride. And I know there's one more aspect that kind of brings all of it together, to be quite honest with you. And and this is one of my most basic leadership qualities that I teach with the companies.
Tell me about it, JJ. What you got?
So I'm gonna take a step. So innovation is the last one you have on there.
Yes.
And when I think innovation, I think of somebody who doesn't see just what they're doing. They can also see how to solve the problems with what they're doing and see into the future for, all of the next stuff coming along and how that fits into their picture right now, so that they continuously make adjustments and move the mission forward for their own team or their multiple teams or whatever the case may be. And so innovation, that's a good one. I like that one.
I like it too. And unfortunately, with innovation come a lot of battles. There's a lot of challenge when you call innovation change. People are resistant to change naturally. We like things to be the way they always have been. But
it's more comfortable.
Yeah, it's comfortable. But things have to change. And one of the things I encourage people to think about is, if you're not growing, what are you doing?
You're doing nothing.
You're dying.
You're dying.
If you're not growing, you're dying. And that's not mine either. I borrowed that too.
Yep. Yeah, you did. That's okay. I can't ever remember where I hear all of these things, but I hear all
and they're so good. And maybe
they're all good. It's all nuggets that you got to keep and repeat.
Absolutely. So if you're not growing, what are you doing? So I've done challenges on innovation, innovative mindset. And you can watch all of those on my website, because they're all just videos in the articles. But there are 4 really thoughtful questions that you can ask to start innovation and ignite change in your organization without it being another battle. And so I'll walk you through those if you'd like.
Sure.
All right. The first one is to ask, where are we now? I didn't say they were simple. I said they were thoughtful. But looking around and taking a very clear picture of where we are now. What are our numbers? What are our metrics? How are we measuring? What do things look like? How do they feel? What's our culture? There are so many questions that you could ask as off of that one. But really, to gain the first question is, where are we now? That's the starting point. Then you ask, where do we want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Again, not a simple question, but a thoughtful one. What numbers do we want to see? Do we want to grow? Do we want to maintain? Are we diversifying? Are we continuing the road ahead? Where do we want to be? Then is my favorite. How could we get there? And I think people miss this one a lot. It's, again, a thoughtful question, not a simple one, but I like it a lot because you get to take all the restrictions off. Don't think about time. Don't think about money. Don't think about resources. Don't think about people. Don't think about how many pens or paper clips you're going to need. How could you do it? And what I find here in asking this question is that a lot of times there are some really easy ways you could get there if you had all the time and the money and the people.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times pieces of that solution are hiding underneath those ideas.
Yes.
And so I just take them off, go away. The fourth question is the very real question of how will we get there? So you have this big, ideally it's a big pool of ideas, methods, processes, procedures, ideas that you could use to solve the problem or make the change. And then you get to pick the pieces. You can apply your values as a filter. What does our company value? What fits through there? What do we have the resources for? That fits through the filter. And it starts to create a plan for how we're going to change, how we're going to get from point A to point B.
You must be a logistics person.
Oh, I am. 21R, represent.
There you go.
Jack of all trades.
That's right. Yes.
So it comes through. It does.
Yes. Yes.
But it's real and it works. And with one of the clients that I was working with, they had a really clear picture of where they were. And so I came in, and one of the first questions we worked on was, where do you want to be? And all of them said they wanted off the board. So this is a really good starting point. Okay. In 1 year, you all went off. Okay. Let's
That's
work
common,
with
by
that.
the way. That's common, by the way. I did my time. I don't want to do it anymore.
It's common. But I'm pleased to say that by looking at and implementing some of these innovative solutions that we came up with for the group, only one person left the board at the end of the year, and we were able to bring on 2 more board members.
Oh, nice.
So it was a big success, and that organization is growing and so much stronger now because instead of closing up shop, they rolled up their sleeves
Did the
and
work.
figured out how they could make innovation work for them.
You know, and questions are so important. I challenge anybody who likes to read, not only to read her book, by the way, which is called Business Not Battle Mindset, but to also read John Maxwell's book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. I love that book. I read it probably once a quarter.
I don't think I've read that one yet.
It's a really good one. I believe it's called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. I'll verify that, but it's the questions book from John Maxwell. There's only, well, I think there might be 2, but that one's really, really good. But we're past the 30-minute mark, but that doesn't mean we have to just drop the call. At least I know there was something you wanted to tell people about, and then whatever message you want to close the call out with, because this call is all about you.
Thanks, JJ.
Sure.
I wanted to invite any nonprofit board members, volunteers, staff, leaders, anyone connected to the nonprofit industry to join me on February 20th at noon Eastern Standard Time for what I call the Nonprofit Mission-Focused Mixer. We're going to be diving a little bit deeper into each of these topics that we've talked about today. And there's also time for networking and discussion. So it's not a webinar. It is a very intentional mixer where you get to meet and mingle with other people in the nonprofit industry, because there's a lot to be learned from it, from one another. And so I will make sure that link is, I'll get that to JJ or put it in the chat. And I look forward to seeing you all there.
And go ahead.
I was just going to close the same way that I normally close our all calls.
That's just telling your nonprofit mixer date.
I'm not used to a ticker tape. So the way that we close all of our all calls, and you all are welcome to join us for those two. It's the first Thursday of the month at 5 p.m. And we can link to that as well, is to remember that you are in business, not battle, and to ignite, inspire, and grow wherever you go. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, JJ, for having me.
Yeah, no problem. What a great message. But, just like every single other one of my live streams, I want to make sure that I tell the entire audience that if this message resonates with you, it doesn't matter if it's on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you see this, if you think more people can benefit from that message, make sure you share it, repost it, do whatever you got to do with your audience, like it, subscribe to it, but most importantly, keep the conversation going. So Elise will have the opportunity right below this after she gets off the call to put whatever link she wants to as a response to whichever platform she decides to put it on. But, please comment on this. If Elise sees it, she'll say something. If I see it, I'll say something. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, we want the community to have a conversation around these topics and issues and all these things that we discuss on a regular basis. So please keep the conversation going. It's just as important as the conversation itself. And that's all I have to say about that. Elise, thank you again for being a guest today. And if you ever want to do it again, I'm open to it. And it doesn't have to be about your initiatives. We could talk about any leadership subject. They're all pretty passionate to me. And I love talking to veterans.
I think we could dive into just about anything.
Yes. All of my veteran counterparts that are all over the country, we all have very similar mindsets when it comes to leadership. So great conversations come out of those mindsets. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in or watching or commenting, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.